would it be safe to say that you were pushed out of the CBSA as soon as you wouldn't engage in some of the systemic corruption that was occurring within the institution?
Yes, I was a problem for them, walking a straight line, being transparent. I was pushed to the end of a psychological breakdown. And when they realized that they couldn't find anything wrong to basically use against me, they pushed me to a psychological breakdown, and it was a termination in disguise what they did. So they silenced me that way. They got rid of 4 other colleagues that were with me that were complaining the same things that we had brought to the attention of the various members of the government. And that did not sit well with CBSA because we had followed all the protocols. And when we saw that this was becoming a matter of national security, public interest for everyone, it didn't sit well with them. So because we had gone to the various members of parliament, and we were subsequently all punished, and we all ended up without employment. Wow. Each and every one had a distinguished career, some of the highest security clearance, never had been in trouble with the employer. And the day we said no and we started talking, we paid the ultimate price.
Jesus. Wow. So this kind of brings us into a larger conversation about the future of Canada. And so we at Blendr News, including Jonathan and I, have been covering some of the bills that are currently tabled, which is the Bill C2, the Strong Borders Act, Bill C8, the Cybersecurity Bill, and Bill C9, which is the Combating Hate Act. Now, each one of these poses a big threat for Canadians in our eyes for different reasons. So when it comes to the Strong Borders Act, this grants new and broad powers to government agencies, including border services, immigration, and export control, with fewer protections for individuals. It shares data demands, also would allow the government to search mail without a warrant, and just vastly expands their powers in the name of national security with a lot of vague language. Then with Bill C8, the Cybersecurity Bill, this would authorize the governor and council or the minister of industry to direct telecom service providers to, quote, do anything or refrain from doing anything that is necessary to secure the Canadian telecommunications system. This would include being able to shut off internet access on a whim. And lastly, we've got Bill C9, which is the Combating Hate Act. And this would amend the criminal code to remove requirement for the Attorney General consent for hate propaganda offenses, creating a new offense of willfully promoting hatred by displaying certain symbols, create a new hate crime offense when underlying offense motivated by hatred. But you have expressed concerns to us as well about some of these bills, and I'd love to hear those and have you share them with our audience, considering you have been in these institutions and seen how they operate. And so would love to hear your concerns on that front.
So what I'm about to say is going to be the uncomfortable truth. And I think it's important to inform the public about what's really going on in the background. First and foremost, everything I'm about to say is something that members of parliament have been made aware of since 2016 by me and my colleagues with supporting documentation. So when it comes to the bill about opening the mail, the Borders Act, this is something that is very concerning. Basically, these things were already happening. Sorry about that, my French again. These things were already happening in the past. I informed the members of parliament about my concerns back in 2006 about such an issue. And when I look at this today, I'm seeing this in a way that, and and this is my perception, that they're just trying to legitimize something that they were already doing. And why I say that is because I provided information with supporting documentation to the Conservative Party and to the Liberal government in 2016, where I was dispatched. While I was in the region, I was dispatched to a government location, and just bear with me here a second. To a government location in order to verify and analyze seized mail that was being held by a government entity outside of the CBSA. The mail belonged to 3 individuals living in Canada. After I carefully reviewed the mail, I had opened it and reviewed and proceeded to seize a certain amount of the mail for further verification and analysis for possible court proceedings. I cataloged the seized item, and I asked the person in charge at that location to provide me with the warrant number or another number of a special procedure that was being used that I cannot mention at the moment. That would allow me to seize this for possible use in federal court at a later date. The person in charge of that location became very uncomfortable and stated I should ask my superior because they did not have the information available to give to me. And I submitted my reports and my finding to management at the CBSA. I never received a follow-up on what I seized, and I was never asked again to go to that location, and I wonder why. If I had been subpoenaed to testify in federal court on my seizures of the mail, this would have been possibly and likely been thrown out of court for many reasons. One, I was never provided with a warrant number by management. Second, there was the issue of the chain of custody of what I seized after I turned it over to management at CBSA. Basically, I never received any record from management in the handling of my document seizures. All I can say is that in this particular case, this was a case of national headlines, and it was expensive to the Canadian government and the taxpayers. Something like this should have been managed in a more rigorous manner to avoid losing the public confidence in our integrity as an agency. So when I see one of these bills that stipulates giving civilian government employee or even civilian employee in a law enforcement capacity that type of power, I think it's very dangerous.
So just to recap there, you were instructed to look at someone's mail, seize it, and you were never given a warrant behind the scenes for that action.
No, I received the order to go to that. I'm being very careful of what, not to identify location, but there was a government location. I was told that there was seized mail there. Mail was being retained there, and I should go and look at it to see if there's anything of interest. I have some specialized training in analysis and a good solid background in investigation. So I went there and I looked at the mail that was there. The mail was belonging to 3 individuals living in Canada that were already under a certain process with CBSA. I followed my orders, assuming that this was part of a regular process. But after I did my work, the official that was there was a person, an official government employee also, in an investigation capacity. And I asked for the warrant number, and that person became very uncomfortable. I was also uncomfortable not having the proper paperwork in my hands. I was just directed by a high-ranking member to go there. But yet, I was never provided a warrant number before or after I submitted my report. And what happened to what I seized was there was never any feedback by management. And they had a duty and obligation to do so. Because if I had been calling court, this would have been a problem.
So when you say that your superiors within the CBSA were very uncomfortable when you asked them about the warrants, in what sense? Did they get on their back foot and kind of feel like, oh, stuttering and this and that, kind of coming up with a thing, or did they get aggressive towards you? Like, what was that interaction like?
No, actually, it wasn't the CBSA management that was uncomfortable. It was the person at the other government location that was holding the mail.
Okay.
And what happened is when I came back, the management wasn't there. I put whatever I seized with my report on the manager's desk inside his office, and there was never any follow-up by him. And the day went on. I did my job. Day went on, and I was never provided any feedback by him or anything. And I was never asked to go there again. Somebody else was dispatched there later on for further other businesses. So, I think that the silence was intentional. So by CBSA management.
So do you think that this is a larger trend within these institutions, or do you think that this was a anomaly that you were a part of? Do you, and just kind of happened to be wrong place, wrong time, or wrong person? Or do you think that there is just a pattern of these style of things happening within the institutions?
Well, to be honest with you, based on what I've seen over the years, I think it's something that's common. Whether there was a warrant number or not, there was still been a failure in the process of doing that thing. Second of all, based on everything I've seen and some of the orders I received and some of the things I reported to the MPs, to the RCMP, I think that there's a pattern there, and there's definitely need to an oversight. And when I see these bills, I think that I'm confident that they're just trying to legitimize things that were already being done under the shadow, And this is not. This is one of the many things that when I testified in Parliament, it was agreed that I wouldn't talk about everything to avoid public scrutiny. There was not. It was an opportunity in Parliament to try to restore integrity and the way we do things, and give an opportunity for proper investigation that never came.
So what has your experience been like when you try to bring information like this to MPs? Are you met with concern? Is there a lot of apathy, hostility? What's that process look like?
So just so we're clear, I've always been politically neutral. When I worked as a federal employee, with the type of work I did in operation and intelligence, you always remain neutral and you serve with loyalty. And I apologize, I'm taking a little detour, but it's important.
That's okay.
You serve with loyalty. When I voted as a person, I voted differently from one in the election to another. Now, when I approached my Liberal MP, I provided him with everything I just talked to you and a lot of other things that were concerning, and this was pushed all the way to the Minister of Public Safety at the time, which was Ralph Goodale, and nothing happened from there. When I approached, I knocked on a lot of doors of the Conservative Party, and finally, one very important Conservative Party member in Ottawa opened this door to me. He wasn't there that day, but his political advisor was there, and we sat in a room for more than 1 hour. I handed over to him a lot of supporting documentation on electronic format and paper format. And to get to the point, it seems that he already knew this was going on, but it didn't seem, from what I gather, it didn't seem to be something of an emergency for him. And I was very concerned about that, and I brought that up, and I think that was something that was not well received, where I basically said, look, this is something that you should be very concerned about. Another member of the Conservative Party that I reached out, that's somebody very important, when I reached out to him, I reached out in writing, and I explained that I was reaching out as a federal employee, bringing to him concern that I needed to meet with him, me and my colleagues, not as an individual under his constitution as a constituent. He basically replied to me that I'm not part of his area as a constituent, and I should go back to my Liberal MP. Even though I had spoken with one of his staff, explained to him in detail the reason why I was calling and the information and what was going on. So it was really hard to establish some sort of support. The ones that came to realize the seriousness of this is a matter of national security, and they went above and beyond the border, was the Bloc Québécois. Once they saw some of the evidence I was presenting, they flew in an MP from deep inside Quebec in a snowstorm, and she met with me with her staff. And she realized just how serious the erosion of accountability was happening inside the agency, and the failure of the reporting mechanism, and how we were prevented to speak to the member of parliament. Let's not forget that I was threatened and this is why the bill today, I'm saying this is important, why I'm coming out for those bills. I was actually threatened by a high-ranking member of CBSA in writing that I'm not to talk about anything or other things that were occurring, including verbally telling me that if I spoke to the members of parliament, that he would take away my pension and would declare me a threat to national security. Now, can you imagine the power given to somebody like that, and basically saying things like that? So this erosion that was happening, and the constant power to silence everybody has now become a reality into those bills. So nobody will be able to inform anybody on the opposition government for anything that's happening with those bills.